A long time ago, I was talking with some friends about physics and unified theories, the universe, all that really crazy, trippy stuff people like to talk about on maybe it's a Friday night and everyone's chilling inside, just relaxing. We're teenagers. And I was told that what we know about M theory and string theory may all be wrong. It could all be wrong. And this was from a friend whose dad was actually a physicist. And he was like, basically what his dad told him is what you got to be careful for when it comes to all this stuff are people who have dedicated themselves, their lives to some idea. Because when it turns out that idea is wrong, they cannot give it up. If you dedicate 10 years of your life to the pursuit of some idea that later turns out to be wrong, you wasted those 10 years. People can't let that happen. Their whole life would crumble all around them. So naturally, they get defensive. They get angry. And I think we're starting to see that now. In this article from CNN, well, they're putting it rather bluntly. Democrats need a reckoning after misjudging the nation's mood. Oh, you think? All right. Well, good on Stephen Collinson for CNN writing this analysis because it's true and correct. The resounding and the disaster the Democrats faced in these past elections. It's a red flag. It's a warning flare. People don't like critical race theory. They don't like the applied principles of critical race theory. It was so bad. The Democrats are spiraling, and it's so bad that a trucker in New Jersey who spent only $153 on his campaign has won. Now, of course, his opponent, the Democrat, is saying it's not over yet, but he's down by like 2,000 votes. This is a state Senate seat. This trucker guy was like, I'm not having it, and he ran. And that was it. That was all it took for people to be like, I ain't voting Democrat. Do you think the Democrats will wake up? No. And that's why I told you that story. Because they've dedicated too much of their lives to critical race theory, a psychotic, a deranged and racist ideology. Oh, they say things like critical race theory is simply the legal analysis of the intersection of race and the law. And that's just not true. What we're really talking about with critical race theory is the root of it's the view from Marxist ideology of critical theory of oppressed versus oppressor. What Kimberly Crenshaw wrote in her book was that Marx didn't understand racial dynamics in the United States. And while in Europe and Eastern Europe, you might be able to say that a rich person is the oppressor and a poor person is the oppressed, thus you get that Marxist ideology. In America, race plays a bigger role, meaning that whiteness is like property. And from this, you get all of these offshoots. All of a sudden, you now have these crazy ideologies about white fragility, about, white privilege and all of these things. And now instead of it just being like you're rich or you're not, it's like you are whiteness or you're not. People think that's insane. Why? Well, it is insane. I mean, there's some truth in the original ideas that people were looking at when it comes to race. And the problem is they take that and they turned it into something nonsensical. All of a sudden now you have anti-racism. It's not enough to be actively, it's not enough to be to not be racist. You must be actively anti-racist. Or these ideas that they want to return to segregation. No joke, they do. They're having segregated events at schools, segregated dorms. The best the progressives can do is pretend that it isn't happening because they have dedicated their lives in the past 10 years or so to this ideology, for many longer than that. And that means that right now, as they're starting to realize they're the losers and that most people don't like this, they bet on the wrong horse. This is what happens when you're a grifter. When your whole political persona is not based upon principles, but based upon what you think people want. And so what do we get? Well, over the past 10 years, the way I see it is due to our personal biases as a culture, we think racism is bad. Big businesses said, go with whatever the not racist thing is, right? We all want to hate racism and bigotry and all that stuff. The problem was this was an excellent attack vector for cultists who realized we can start saying whatever we want and they'll fund it. And they did. So people like Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, for instance, He's dedicated so much to this, he's betrayed his own principles. He's no longer liberal. He's a fascist. I know it's funny to say, right? Because it's like, well, they're the ones that, no, he is. People like Cenk Uygur and these other progressives and these Democrat personalities are fascists in the sense that right now they are in agreement with the U.S. government making mandates on people's medical choices and mandates that you buy a private pharmaceutical product from a massive multinational corporation. Yes, this is Mussolini's fascism in a certain respect. The word isn't perfect, and maybe we need a different word for it. But you've got people who have been so dedicated to the perceived tribalism instead of actual principles. They're now saying big pharma is great, whereas 10 years ago they were like big pharma is bad. And now they're like government edict is a good thing. The funny thing is when they call people like me or you fascists, when we're literally like no government mandates. Government should not be mandating massive pharmaceutical products. Isn't it funny how that works? Well, the Democrats do need a reckoning. Otherwise, they're going to lose. But let me show you. Let me show you how they won't have that reckoning. In a tweet from Cenk Uygur, he highlights Tulsi Gabbard. I am a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I supported her in the primaries. I donated the maximum to her campaign. Tulsi Gabbard tweeted, McAuliffe's loss is a victory for all Americans. Why? Because it was a resounding rejection of efforts to divide us by race. The stripping of parental rights and arrogant deaf leaders, this benefits us all. Now, why would Tulsi Gabbard, a progressive or seemingly a progressive, say something like that? Because Tulsi Gabbard operates on principle. And you see, let's go back in time. What principles do I share with Tulsi and why did I support her? Well, it's quite simple. When it comes to the issue of pro-choice versus pro-life, Tulsi Gabbard says safe, legal, and rare. And I'm like, agreed. That used to be where Democrats were, not anymore. Now they're pro-abortion. Tulsi Gabbard is saying we shouldn't divide Americans based on race. Agreed. Stripping of parental rights. Bad. Arrogant deaf leaders. Too many of them. I completely agree with what she said. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a fan of the Republican Party. I'm glad that Youngkin won because it shows us that regular Americans looked at the cult and said, no, we have had enough of your psychotic behavior. You see, what was happening is a small fringe minority who believes this psychotic ideology has been pushing and bullying and cancer culturing their way into power. It eventually reached parents who saw what their kids were being taught and said, I will not stand for this. Now, of course, there have been people before me and people like me who have been speaking out against this stuff for a long time. It's finally starting to reach people, which is a great thing. Cenk Uygur says Tulsi Gabbard is obvious right-winger now. And so is anyone who is still a fanboy of hers. Turncoats like this who are clearly doing it for the money and attention are truly sickening. Critical race theory isn't taught in any school in Virginia, you effing obvious liar. Tulsi Gabbard didn't say anything about critical race theory, did she? No, it's not in her tweet. She didn't say that. Cenk Uygur is also lying because he knows he's losing. The Democrats were crushed in this past election. I mean, it was bad. Not only that, but take a look at 2020. Although the Democrats did pretty well, I mean, they retained control of the House. They gained control of the Senate through the executive branch with the tiebreaker vote from the vice president. It's 50-50. You take a look at Miami. A Republican won a major urban center. You look at South Texas, turns red. You take a look at Virginia, the whole state shifting red, Republican. Because these ideas are broken and we all know it. Now, Cenk can choose to say, I'm sorry. For the past 5 years, I have embraced an ideology that people didn't like. I just thought they did because it was all I was hearing. I thought it's what people wanted. And the left clearly doesn't. Will he do that? No, he can't. He's built a persona around being wrong. And so his only hope is, no, it's not me who's wrong. It's everyone else who's right wing. Everyone who likes Tulsi Gabbard, who's critical of nuclear energy, who is pro-gun control, who is pro-choice. She's right wing. These people can't see it. I mean, I actually think Cenk Uygur can. I think he can see it. And I think he realized that when he was losing, he was like, am I on the wrong side of this? What do I do, though? Does he come out now and say, you know what, I was wrong? He can't. He built up his audience in this direction. There's nothing he can do now. Imagine this. Someone like Cenk, his whole MO is just being whatever the left wants him to be. So he takes a big bet on the fringe cult of the left, thinking this is what they want him to be. No principles. If he had principles, he'd be saying what Tulsi Gabbard said, because she was a darling of the progressives and Bernie Sanders, even defying Hillary Clinton. And now she's standing up on principle. No, she's right wing. No, you've just gone so far left, you've driven yourselves off the cliff. We were screaming at you and waving at you saying, Cenk, stop driving. Stop. You're going too far. This is not what the American people want. He couldn't tell. You see, on Twitter, screaming in his ears were the woke cultists. And so he just assumed as they drowned out everyone else, that was what people wanted. Me? I, for the most part, just care about what I think is true and correct and what is right and what is principled. That's why I've long said I like universal health care. Nothing's going to change my mind on that one. But we would need private health insurance supplemental. It's far from perfect considering how the doctors treat, COVID patients and everything like that with the vaccines and race-based distribution. I would not want these cultists to gain power through the government, in which case it's a rock and a hard place, isn't it? But I've always basically been in the same place, except for 2A. For me, that was basically like there is a legal method towards changing the Second Amendment, and it hasn't been done. If you want to take away people's right to keep and bear arms, you got to change the Constitution. Otherwise, sorry. So that was a big shift for me. For the most part, my politics are still idealistically left-leaning. They won't say that because, well, when they realize they were the cult, when they're starting to realize, as Cenk Uygur is like, no one's teaching this, it's like, Cenk, we've seen the books. You're not convincing anybody, okay? Except for the people you've maintained in the brainwashed state. Regular Americans, moms and dads, saw what was happening. They saw it with their own eyes. And you're losing them. Maybe Cenk should just come out and be like, I was wrong. But he won't. Because for them, it's not about principles. Never has been. Take a look at this story from Fox News, May 13th. Virginia parents blast school board over graphic books and critical race theory. Pretty despicable. Loudoun County Public Schools. Why, here is a mother. She has her hair is dyed red. She is not white. In fact, she's a black woman. And she said, this is racist. What they're teaching our kids is racist. Oh, there's a bunch of examples, of course. We have this. This is from Loudoun County. White fragility. White people are in a state of privilege, blah, blah, blah. You see, what the left will do to deflect against this is say, that's not really critical race theory. Right. Okay. It's critical race applied principles. It is the praxis of critical theory, of critical race theory. When they say critical race theory is being taught in schools, what they mean is the principles that were developed through CRT are being implemented in all forms and all facets. Now, I think most people realize this. So what do you get now? Regular Americans are standing up to the Democrats and saying, you've lost the plot. They're finally starting to realize it. With the collapsed economy, with the constant mandates, with the labor shortages, they're starting to realize things are getting worse. And it is Democrat policy doing it. Now, the media is doing everything in their power to try and protect them. My favorite fact check from USA Today is, it is high demand causing gas prices to go up, not Joe Biden's policies. Absolutely evil people. You want to know why that one's so evil? Why is there a high demand for gas? Because Joe Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline. Because Joe Biden banned fracking on federal land, among other things. Joe Biden's policies, free trade, high corporate taxes, Keystone was big. It led people to speculate. This is the Wall Street Journal reporting. Speculators immediately started buying up supply, not because of real demand, because Biden created artificial demand through his policies. The USA Today fact check tries to deflect against that. No, it's not his fault. If they gave you the full context and explained why is demand on the rise? Well, because people fear that with the shuttering of Keystone, the banning of fracking, there's going to be a shortage in deliverables in the coming year or two or longer, in which case demand will remain high and increase, but supply is constrained by Biden's policies, in which case today, speculators started buying up gas, oil, driving the prices up. Among other things, inflation in general. The cost of labor went up due to Biden's policies. Shortages, paying people not to work, vaccine mandates, the trucker policies, the ports, all of these things are interconnected. But they do everything in their power to try and deflect and protect Democrats. If they do not wake up, it's going to get a whole lot worse from here. I think Ben Shapiro is saying red tsunami incoming. Maybe. We still have a year. Who knows what could happen? Which brings me to this. Revealed the racist, Islamophobic, transphobic, and anti-Semitic posts of the Republican trucker who defeated New Jersey Senate president and spent only $153 on his campaign. Edward Durr. Oh, man, here come the smears, Ed. But you know, Ed knows. He ran probably because he said enough. He sees what's happening in the media. He sees what's going on with the Democratic Party. He says, I'm going to run. Nobody thought he'd win, and he did. At least he's effectively won at this point. Now, here come the media smears. Has he actually said anything that is racist, Islamophobic, transphobic? Of course not. He said just like regular guy stuff. Look at him. He's a regular old dude. Regular old dude. Take a look at this. He said both sides on Charlottesville were thugs, BLM, and the neo-Nazis. Okay. Well, sure. He said that Chelsea Manning should be in prison using a disparaging term, a disparaging pronoun. Okay, transphobic maybe. Did anyone see the cops walking Trumpers allowed to walk in the Capitol? A lot of people did. He says Kamala Harris got her job based on race and gender. It's sad. And then he has a post where he says it's a quote from Hungarian Jews saying, how did we let it get this bad? And he's basically saying, don't let it get that bad. You see how they're trying to smear this guy? Look at these results. Edward Durr got 32,000 votes. This is insane. And Steve Sweeney got 30,000. 32,000 votes by virtue of just being not a Democrat. So what happens now? Well, we're going to see a lot more of this moving forward. Red tsunami, maybe. Durr's 58 is employed as a truck driver for furniture store Raymore and Flanagan. He grew up in South Jersey, has 3 kids. Look at Jeff Van Drew. Jeff Van Drew was a Democrat in South Jersey, changed parties. He said the Democrats have lost their minds. How do you think I feel? I was never a big fan of the Democrats. I was never a big fan of the Republicans. But where the Democrats used to be. And I wonder why. I wonder why they changed. You know, a lot of people say that Obama is still running a shadow presidency of some sort. Well, I'll tell you this. Obama certainly is influential and does give advice. I don't know if he's actually the president or any of those weird, conspiracies. People think that Joe Biden is just calling up Obama and being like, whatever you say, boss. Maybe. Either way, I certainly think Obama is advising, as why wouldn't he? Former president. Is he the one who's pushing all of this psychotic behavior? I don't know. Publicly, he's called it a circular firing squad, saying it's bad and people don't like this stuff. So I don't think he's got as much control as people realize. I think what happened is consultants. Democratic leadership is circling the drain. There's nobody left. I mean, let's just stop. Name a charismatic Democrat. Go. I'll give you a second. All right, who'd you name? Anybody? Michelle Obama. Maybe. I mean, she might be able to win if she runs. Barack, I don't know. I mean, he's active to a certain degree, but not really. This is why Joe Biden was the candidate. Because the Democrats have no charisma. The Republicans do. I mean, Trump was charismatic. Nasty guy. That's true. But you've got a handful of people who stand out. Josh Hawley stands out. Ted Cruz stands out. I don't know if they have what it takes to be president, but Ron DeSantis does. Ron DeSantis taking care of Florida is effective, successful. People are happy with him. If he runs for president, I'd imagine he'd win. I don't think Trump should run. I think Virginia proves why Trump should not run, because suburban housewives are going to be like, I'll vote for DeSantis. I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. And then DeSantis would win. We'd probably end up seeing Republicans control every branch to an extreme degree because Democrats are unwilling to accept what they represent. And they represent fringe, deranged ideas. And there's no charisma there. Pete Buttigieg, nothing. Kamala Harris, nothing. Who could possibly run for president on the Democratic ticket in 2024? They have no one. Not a single person, not even AOC. I think AOC would just be old enough, but she does not have what it takes. She may have popularity among the fringes of the left, but not among regular working people. So who's going to run for the Democrats? Nobody. It's amazing. I love it when, last year the Democrats were saying things like the Republican Party is over. Look at them. They're disheveled. They're fractured, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yo, this guy, Edward Durr, barely ran and he won. You think the Republicans are in trouble? The Republicans are going to get votes by virtue of not being Democrats. It is going to be the inversion of 2020. Joe Biden got votes because he was just not Trump. Now you're going to see what happens when people are like, I'll take anyone who's not a Democrat. Red tsunami, red wave, whatever you want to call it. I think it's coming. So I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.